Good. Okay. Welcome to tonight's board meeting. Can we please start with the roll call?
Penny Casimir.
Here.
Sandra Bradford.
Here.
Angela Wilcox.
Here.
Mike Shackleton.
Here.
Gavin Newman.
Here.
Barry Altschuler.
Here.
Leah Collister-Lazari.
Here.
Okay. Can we please start with the pledge led by Dr. Harris?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for leading us. Okay, the first thing is my report, and I have a couple things. First of all, I want to thank the board for being so quick in completing the survey, requesting dates or your availability on August 27th for our board retreat. So August 27th from 7:30 until 1. Please mark your calendars. And Brian and I will be working with our IASB rep in order to work on our self-evaluation tools.
I just want to make a comment, Penny, that I'm 50-50. I'll do the best I can, but I do have it's close to college move-in dates. So, but I don't know what that's going to be. So
yeah, and I want the board to know I was pretty firm with the IASB rep explaining that we really want to be in person for this, and that if we can't, we may cancel and reschedule, and she was fine with that. So, and then we received a memo from Brian. I just wanted to ask if there were any questions about procedures for those salaries that are funded by federal grants. Are there any questions for Brian about that? Okay. Woohoo, happy dance for the AAA bond rating. Yay. That was nice to see. So thank you for providing that information to us. And then on a sad/celebratory note, this is the last board meeting of our fiscal year, and we have some folks in our district, primarily at the district office, but one other who this will be their last meeting, and they will be leaving us. So I wanted to acknowledge Mary Dudek, our Assistant Sup of HR. There she is. Mary, we will miss you. We really will. I'm sure Teresa was going to do a great job, but I think we've all grown to really like your sense of humor and respect you, and just want you to know, I think you've done a great job there. Any other board members want to contribute? You don't have to. In addition to Mary leaving, June Nillis, who has served as our Director of Student Information, is also retiring. And Leanne Taylor will be leaving us to, she's right now the number 2 in our business office. She'll be leaving to go to Hawthorne District 73 in Vernon Hills to be the number 1 in the business office. So we wish her well. And then last but not least, and it's a little bit of a personal thing too, Barb Romano, who is the principal of the ELC, is also retiring. And for those of us that have been around a little while, we remember what a compassionate and wonderful advocate she has been for the kids at the ELC. She started when the ELC was housed out at Woodland, and it was not an ideal situation. And I'll never forget the look on her face the day that we had the ribbon cutting at the ELC. So we wish her well too. And I know there are other people. There's always danger in singling out people. I know there are many, many people in our district that are leaving for retirement or to do something else. And I just wanted to say thank you from all of us that you've shared your time and talents with our students in our community. So thank you. That's all I have. As in prior meetings since the middle of March, I am physically present at the district office tonight. Leah is also here. However, she's in another room. And Dr. Harris is here. We have provided opportunity for public comment if someone really did want to come here and be here in person, or we've made available a voicemail line where people can leave public comments. And we do have one public comment tonight. And so I'm going to ask Dr. Harris to play it for us.
Okay, so bear with me for a minute while I access our voice mail system. Hold on one second.
You have reached Barrington. Please enter your mailbox. Welcome. Barrington 220. You have one new message.
All right, here we go. You can hear that?
Press the first message.
All right, here we go.
Make a new message. Today, 2:40 p.m.
My name is Joe McGinn. I'm a resident of Barrington with children who will be entering their sophomore year at Barrington High School and 8th grade at Station Middle School in the fall. Good evening to Dr. Harris and the Barrington Board of Education. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts briefly. I just want to give my strong feeling that I feel that Barrington High School should be open for in-person instruction and classes this fall, even if under some type of creative hybrid model wherever possible. While well-intentioned, I found that the distance learning over the spring semester to be substandard for high school education, especially in this great town and district with a history at the high school that has been such high quality. As these children are preparing for higher education, careers, and competitive colleges, I feel that another long semester from home will put them further behind other peers, and especially as they're preparing for their lives. So thank you for hearing me out on this. And again, I hope that with all the creative and professional energy with this team, that you can come up with ideas to get the high school open as soon as possible while still maintaining safety and distance as needed. Thank you and have a good evening.
Okay, that was the only public comment.
Okay, thank you. Next, Dr. Harris, your reports.
Yes. Okay, let me pull my presentation up here. Share my screen. Okay. I want to begin this evening by commenting a little further about something that Penny referenced, which is our AAA bond rating. Dave and I participated in this rating call over the last couple of weeks, and Dave more than me. Dave worked very hard and provided quite a bit of information to Standard & Poor's to be able to prepare us for the sale of our bonds for the referendum that recently was approved by our community. And so we're very pleased to see that our bond rating stayed solid and with no change at AAA bond rating, which simply means that we're going to get the best interest rate possible and hopefully a lot of interest on the bond market. So just for a point of reference, there are only 85 school districts in the entire country that have this status of a financial outlook and stability and have that rating based on their borrowing capacity, and only 22 of those in the state of Illinois. So we are an elite company here, and that's not by chance. I think you've all heard me say that before. It should be celebrated not only by this board, but past boards over the past 12 to 15 years of working hard to make sure that we have a fiscally conservative approach while by having a excellent education, as we just heard on that public comment from one of our parents. So, you know, I think it's, you know, you have to take time and celebrate this. And we will be doing our bond sale next Tuesday, June 23rd. So if anybody is interested in the community and buying some of our bonds, we did push out a press release with the details. And if you have questions about how to do that, I would encourage you to contact our business office as well. Before I move
That's
on,
the pricing, Brian. We're finalizing the pricing next week.
I'm sorry, the pricing. That's correct. Sorry. Thank you for the clarification. Apologize. Correct. So that'll be our actual rate. Correct, Dave? Yeah. Sorry, I jumped ahead. But then the bonds will be available after that. Correct. All right. I misspoke. Thank you. Any questions from the board in regard to this? All right. Well, let's jump into some people that are on the personnel report tonight. And I actually have them on the call. So technically they're at the meeting here in our virtual room. But we will wait until the personnel report to give them time to make some comments if they wish. First, this face should be no stranger to our community. Chelsea Hedges is recommended this evening to become our new Director of Human Resources, who will be taking Teresa Reiche's spot, who is in turn going to be replacing Mary as the Assistant Superintendent. And so we're excited to have Chelsea change seats. She's been with us for the past 3 years in our Special Services Department. And this is certainly a unique career opportunity for her. And we're excited about that. A little bit about Chelsea. She has spent her entire career in public education, both at the building level and at the district level, primarily with a focus on special education. But she's excited to make this transition, very talented, and we are looking forward to having her expertise and hard work fill this role for us in the Human Resources Department. So congratulations to Chelsea. Also on the personnel report tonight, to replace Chelsea, Sharon Jacobellis will move from the Assistant Director to the Director position, filling Chelsea's role, and then we will begin the search for the Assistant Director position. So also, I would like to take a minute and introduce Edgar De La Mora, who is also on the call here this evening. Edgar is on our personnel report to be recommended as the new Assistant Principal at Sunny Hill. Edgar comes highly recommended to us from McHenry, where he has been a teacher and a summer school principal and some different opportunities there to prepare him for the leadership role here in our district. And again, a little bit about Edgar's background. Has a master's degree in both educational leadership and also in architectural studies, and is a second career educator. So we're excited to have him join us in this district. Learning behavior specialist certification from Quincy University and a bilingual endorsement from National Louis. And so again, both Chelsea and Edgar are on the call here this evening, so we will give them a couple minutes to comment about their change in their role or the hiring in our district in Edgar's case when we get to the personnel. So congratulations to both of them as they went through the interview process, and we'll defer their comments until we get to that point in our agenda. Okay. I do want to take a few minutes and share some of the details about the parent and staff survey results that we recently sent out 2 weeks ago in relation to our planning thoughts and ideas for the 2021 school year. I'm going to turn it over to John Breach at this time. Board members, there is a attached memo that you have that I shared with you that has the details on the survey results. But John, I'm going to let you take the screen here. Do I have to exit out, Matt, or John, or can you jump in over me?
Yeah, I'm not going to need the screen for this one, Brian, but I'll do it for the next part that I think I'm going on to, which was the summer school.
All right, no problem.
Yep, that's all right. So yeah, thanks, Brian. I'm happy to talk about the most recent survey that we sent out to our families in Barrington 220 along with our staff, which was our first sort of forward-facing survey, looking at what are some of the preferences and thoughts moving into the fall, which of course still means that there's a lot of unknowns. Hopefully we're moving to phase 4 and we get some good ISB guidance in the near future. But still we wanted to see where the families and staff are. So I just want to give a kind of a high level overview of some of the highlights of that survey. So the majority of people who responded to the survey felt that the district majority of families, I should say, the district did about as well as could be expected in response to the pandemic. While the majority of people say it's important for students to return to school, most parents reported that they were ready to have their children return with or without social distancing, whereas teachers were a bit more evenly split, with slightly more wanting social distancing in place. It's important to note too that without a vaccine, the majority of parents still plan to send their children back to school. even a little bit more, a few or slightly more parents plan to send their students back to school with or without social distancing in place. Around 22%, and this is important to note, around 22% either want to keep their children home or said they could not respond at this time without social distancing, or I'm sorry, without a vaccine. Teachers were also pretty evenly split on this between coming to school with no protocols or with social distancing protocols, and the other half saying that they would stay home or were unable to answer. So I should say they were evenly split with no protocols or with social distancing, and about 20% of them said that they would either need to stay home or were unable to answer at this time. So sorry, I didn't mean to mislead that. When required to select a plan, so we gave them the plan of whether there would be remote learning, a hybrid plan, or some sort of or fully on campus. When required to select a plan, the majority of parents, 58%, favor reopening school as normal. And the majority of teachers favored coming to school with or without social distancing. About a quarter of parents and teachers would prefer to stay home. So this gets back to the previous comment. About a quarter of parents and teachers would prefer to stay home until there's a vaccine. And finally, as always happens, we asked an open-ended question, and we got some interesting responses. So for the open-ended question, not everyone responded to it. Those that did tended to write quite a bit and had a lot to say. There was not widespread agreement on what the stakeholders had to say. However, there were some themes that emerged. While there were many people who reported that this may be an overreaction to the COVID-19, an equal number reported that we have to take this very seriously and we should continue to do that. There were concerns about work and family logistics regarding the hybrid model, both from parents and staff, and how that would work out. Both groups were concerned with consistency with surrounding districts, particularly staff, when it came to a hybrid model, how they would do childcare and things of that nature. And there were also concerns from both the staff and the parents regarding SEL, students' needs in SEL, along with how grading was going to move forward with more fidelity. And one thing that came up again and again was health and safety, and that both the parents and teachers were very concerned about both the health for themselves and the health for their family. So that was an overwhelmingly within the responses. So it gave us some really good information. Saw overwhelmingly that the parents and teachers want to come back to school as much as possible, but we do need to maintain the health and safety as much as we can guidelines. And it looks like it gave us a lot to think about as we begin to create our plans, and I think Brian's going to share some of those with you later on.
Yeah, I also want to just jump in and thank you, John, for providing that summary. And board members, you had a much more detailed summary of the information. I want to just bring a little context to it. Again, this was a survey went out during the first week of June. Okay, so we were right at the close of the school year, and also at a time that continues to be very fluid. We are in phase 3 in the Illinois reopening plan, where there is still quite a few restrictions, not only for schools, but also for businesses and mobility in our community. So, everybody's perspective, we have to keep that in mind. That was a snapshot in time. And it's one piece of information, both on the staff side and the parent side, to consider when we're gonna try to make some plans and decisions about, how to open it. There's some key information here, and some reaffirming information based on anecdotal, thoughts and comments that I think all of us have received. So I think that was, really overwhelming and good. We had a great turnout. The survey, the largest parent response we've ever seen that I've been doing in parent surveys. Nearly half of our parents responded, which was good. We also had nearly 80% of our staff responded as well. So big return rate, which was excellent. And, I am going to comment further about how to incorporate some of those findings into our thoughts moving forward in just a minute. Before I do that, though, is there any questions from board members about the survey results. Okay, I'm going to talk about the interpretation here in a minute. All right.
Sorry, Brian. Yeah, just one question on the first question in the survey, or in general, did we have any outside guidance on how to word these questions, or is that something that you and your staff did internally?
It was done by us, but we also, I looked at other districts and what they were doing and modeled a few of the questions after that. But ours were unique. In other words, we didn't do a cookie cutter survey tool, but we took samples from other places and vendors and incorporated those in, and using statistical approach to it. So, is there error in it? Sure there is, as in any survey, but we believe it gave us the information that we need.
Brian, I'm really glad you guys did the survey. I thought it was a good one. And I think that the number of respondents is certainly indicative of just how important this issue is on so many levels, family function, continued education of children, concern about long-term effects. And, I'm glad that you said that you will consider this in some questions going forward, because I think, obviously our community is really passionate about this for a number of reasons that are all excellent reasons. And I know you are very concerned as well. So anyway, I'm glad that we sent out this survey though.
Yeah, we may end up doing one more before we're done. We don't know yet. So we'll see. And I'm going to comment on that in a minute. Any other thoughts or comments? Thank you, Mike and Angela.
I was just going to state, well said, you guys. I was not also surprised by the results, which are, very passionate, but also on different ends. So it's going to be really difficult to accommodate everything in the survey. So I want to recognize that up front.
I agree with you, Sandra. Thinking the same thing, that people are very passionate and they have opposite opinions, and there's a wide spectrum of hopefulness. So we'll see how we can do our best.
Okay, if there's no other questions, again, you'll have opportunity in a minute, because I'm going to share some additional information here related to this. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward. I do want to spend some time now and share with the board and the community some of our initial thoughts about opening the schools in the fall. So I am going to exit this presentation, and I'm going to jump on another one here. So bear with me. Okay. All right. Switching presentation. So over the last several weeks, administrative staff, we have begun to gather a significant amount of information from a variety of sources, locally, nationally, the survey data, just a range of best thinking that goes into what school can actually look like for the 2021 school year. And we use the term here, roadmap to reopening. So I only have 5 slides that I'm going to share with you that kind of explains a high level thinking at this time. There is a significant amount of detail being developed under each one of these areas. So I'll talk briefly about it, but want to just give you an overview of where we're at today. And I want to preface this conversation with that ISB, the Illinois State Board of Education, has not provided the Phase 4 guidelines and expectations yet to us. I can tell you every school board, every superintendent, every school in the state is waiting for those guidelines and recommendation. It is a daily dialogue going on in every communication tool possible, as you can imagine, trying to speculate what those expectations are going to look like. We've taken the liberty here to try and put our best thinking in here, looking at other states, looking at the national level, looking at guidelines from the Illinois Department of Public Health, as well as the CDC at the federal level. So there's a lot of thinking that's went into this. So let me walk through this and share with you our thoughts. And what I chose to do is to line it up with Restore Illinois. Okay, this is the state of Illinois' phased plan. It primarily is written for the private sector. In other words, it's around the economy, it's around businesses. However, schools and public facilities are referenced throughout the document. There is multiple pages. It's a lengthy document on the state of Illinois.gov website that has details under each one of these phases. I would encourage either board members or community members, if you want to dig into it, feel free if you haven't already. There is a significant amount of information. So and we are going to phase our reopening thoughts based on what the phases are, the state of Illinois is providing for us. Now, one thing I also want to preference, while we are highly anticipating being in phase 4 to open the school year in August, I am not thinking that it is beyond the possibility that we will be in multiple phases in the 2021 school year. It's possible, okay? So I want the board to keep that in mind as I'm stepping through this. So, and I'll say it again at the end here, we may be in and out of these phases multiple times throughout the school year, depending on, the status of the virus and the, the spread and what's going on in our community and across the country. So in phase 1, this is the rapid spread. Okay, again, I'm using the Restore Illinois terms. And in this case, only the essential workers are on site. We were in this phase back in late March and early April, okay? And we were for several weeks or a month. In this particular scenario, if we are in phase 1 at any point, which we were this past spring, it will be all distance learning, meaning everybody will be at home. One thing I want to point out, we are currently in the process of vetting out a significant enhancement and updating and changes to what that distance learning would look like with rigorous guidelines based on feedback from staff, from parents and students, from the 3 months this spring. So it's going to look different, is what I'm saying. Okay, there'll be grading expectations. It's going to be attendance expectations. There's going to be increased face-to-face instruction, things like that have been asked for, and we are in the process preparing for that if we get into this situation. Okay, I'll say a big if we're in phase 1 at any point during the school year. Okay, let's move on to phase 2. Pretty much the same comments. This is the flattening of the curve stage. This is where we move to toward the end of April and into May, where things were heading in the right direction in regard to cases and testing and all those things we've become all too familiar with. So therefore, again, we would be in a complete distance learning mode in this phase as we were this spring. Again, all essential staff on site as necessary. And finally, in a 2021 school year, we would be in a distance learning mode if we were in phase 2 at any point, meaning that everybody would be at home except for our IT staff, our buildings and ground staff, and other essential people. So again, a large majority of everybody related to the school district would be working at home. Okay. Again, with the rigorous guidelines and expectations that we are currently in draft form that we'll be finalizing here in the next several weeks. Finally, stepping into step 3. This is phase 3. Okay. This is where we are as of today, right here on June 16th. We are currently in phase 3. All right. If we were to start school today, this is what we would be working under, these conditions. All right. And this is a recovery mode where you can have 10 people or less in a designated space. All right. And again, we're not making this up. This is based on the state of Illinois and the public health department's requirements. What does this mean for education? Staff members will be on site as necessary. So we will have some staff be returning to our schools under these conditions, okay? Which is what's going on today, happened over the last several days. Let me elaborate a little bit of what that may look like. Some groups of educational services will be provided on site. For example, our most neediest group that really struggled over the past 3 months of the school year was our special education programs. It really was a challenge to provide those needed services for some of our kids. ELL services for some students, also very, very difficult in some circumstances to provide bilingual services or ELL support for our students. Again, might be a program that we would consider some returning to school on. Again, very isolated, unique situations here, where we would ask staff to be back in the building along with the students. We would have to provide a significant amount of PPE, personal protective equipment, and includes gloves, masks, face shields, hand sanitizer, all types of protocols, including social distancing, would be in place in this phase. Those are all provided in the current guidance from ISB related to summer school, and they would follow into the school year if we were in this phase. For sports, we do have guidelines that have come from the IHSA and approved by the Illinois Public Health Department. In fact, yesterday and today, our high school athletes have been at Barrington High School outside. If you had the opportunity to drive by, you saw a very controlled environment of students in groups of 10 or less with one staff member, coach, trainer, and they were all had to do temperature checks. They had to wear masks. They had to follow strict hygiene protocols and procedures during that time. We had to space out. We had to have distance between the transitions. The students could not hang around the campus or site. They had to come on during their designated time and leave appropriately when their session ended. So again, very tight expectations, guidelines, and protocols when it comes to having students in place in this particular phase. Again, we would be in a primarily a large majority of our students would be in a distance learning mode, meaning most staff and most students would still be at home, okay, other than unique circumstances. And we would only have students and staff on site as required and followed under these guidelines. Again, it would be very difficult to have a high majority of our programs on our campuses in groups of 10 or less. Does that make sense to everybody? So again, very high restrictions still in this mode. So let's talk about phase 4. In phase 4, which is where I hope we're moving here in the next couple of weeks, and I hope we stay for a long, long time. Okay, this is the revitalization mode, as the state calls it, means trying to get back to normal, all right, in this situation. In this particular case, we've got a couple different options that we are currently considering, and let me walk through this. First of all, new public health guidelines and regulations will be in place. We have not received that guidance yet. However, we do know we're going to get it, and it'll be restrictions on movement. It'll be restrictions on masks, all the PPE items I mentioned before. So we will have to provide those expectations upon our return to school in this mode. Okay, all staff members in this mode will be on site, all staff, regardless of which path we choose to go below, because we know we have to have our staff members back into the educational environment, and we want to do that in this particular situation. We will follow the IHSA and the IESA guidelines for athletics. The IESA is the middle school version of the athletic association that we are members of, and we would follow those guidelines. They have not provided those yet for phase 3. I do anticipate those for being available for phase 4. Okay, so before that would impact our middle school students for athletics. We do not have any guidance or expectations yet for fine arts and clubs yet. Much different situation. We will certainly have to work through those based on expectations and guidelines as provided by ISB, and also we would probably look closely at the IHSA guidelines as well as guidance for those activities. That would be the co-curricular scenarios outside of the school day. We also would consider some type of a plan for distance learning for some students. All right, we saw in the survey results that there are some parents that will just flat out to refuse to send their kids back to school for health purposes or other issues. So we are going to have to consider some type of a distance learning opportunity, maybe a school within a school type of situation. And then we would have to either assign staff to those situations or ask for volunteers, which we might have also. If you looked at the staff survey, you saw there was some staff that indicated those types of concerns as well. So we have no idea whether they would match up with the need, but we may look at some type of a long-term commitment there, like an entire semester like from August 20th till December 20th. And if they would volunteer to go into that mode, and then we would provide the educational environment in a distance learning format. So again, that's in development at this time. We do not have details, but it's something I believe we need to consider and to try to meet the needs of all of our students, families, and staff in this particular situation. Now, at that point, there are really two different paths. And here's why I will say this again. ISB has not given us their final guidelines and expectations, okay? Until we get those guidelines and expectations, we're not quite sure which path A, will be able to go, or B, we even can consider. But in planning purposes, we're considering both. Let me talk about the left hand of the screen, which is the all return. This is the one that is the, the wishes of most staff and most parents, and me too, quite frankly. I would like to have all the kids and all the staff back in the buildings, okay? But we also have to be realistic about what that looks like. So in that case, all students would return every day, okay? Now, we just don't know whether or not we're going to be able to meet those public health guidelines, though, for example, especially at our largest facilities. The high school with 3,500 people in and out of that building every single day, we just don't know. We don't know whether we're going to be able to do that, okay? We want to do that. We're going to work diligently to try and figure out in this phase how to do that, okay? If we can do it, we'll do it. If we physically or operationally cannot do it based on the rules and the guidelines that we're expected to do, then we may have to go to a hybrid plan, which over on the next slide, okay? And let me talk a little bit about the hybrid plan. So here's our current thinking. In this hybrid plan, all elementary students and early childhood students would be back in the buildings. There is just too many variables here for younger children with health and daycare needs and childcare issues. It is too complex to even try and realize what that looks like. And at the elementary level, we believe we'll be able to manage that differently because the largest building has around 600 students. We can isolate elementary classrooms much differently than we do in a middle school or a high school environment because kids don't move every 50 minutes out of the classroom in an elementary environment. So those types of scenarios in our current scheduling at the high school and middle school environment create significant challenges. As you can imagine, when you have all 3,000 students or all 1,200 students at Prairie or all 1,000 students at Station moving every 50 minutes in a hallway environment that is crowded and, on top of one another. And those of you who've been in the hallways, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's very, very difficult and would be a challenge. So we may have to do something different at the secondary level. So again, to reiterate, K-5, pre-K-5, everybody's in the building. Let me talk about middle school, and you'll see 6 on here. After talking in concept with the middle school principals, there was a huge desire to have the 6th graders in the building every day. 6th grade is a huge transition time when in school in our district, moving from a self-contained environment at elementary into the 8-period day at the middle school level. So we would, again, the ages of 6th graders, 12 years old, there's some concern about independence at home without parents and supervision. It's kind of that line that's very difficult to cross. And so therefore 6th graders in this particular hybrid plan thinking would be in the building every single day. 7th and 8th grade at the middle school then would be on some type of a rotational schedule every other day, an A-B type schedule. Now I have no idea what that looks like. There's multiple models out there and we are vetting those out currently. I don't have the details yet. We're certainly preparing that if we have to go into this mode, but we would rotate our 7th and 8th graders. So essentially then we would have about 1/3 of our students out of the building on any given day, which would make it a much easier situation to manage in hallways, lunchroom, PE, all of those types of spaces. It would give us additional space in the building to spread out a little bit and create some better environments for our students. Now, again, we're speculating here. Until we receive those guidelines, we'll get a little more detail. We'll be able to hone in on this plan. Finally, at the high school level, same type of plan. There's concern with high school administrative team that we have the freshmen in the building, especially early in the year, the first month or so of the school year. Freshmen, it's another huge transition into that environment, and there is a concern to have them on campus pretty regularly the first month or quarter of the school year. So we're going to look at that hard when our final planning and what that may look like. And again, sophomores, juniors, and seniors then would be in some type of a rotational basis where we would have about half of the students in the high school not attending on any given day. Okay, I'm estimating here, but again, we would have to look hard at this programming and see what happens. One other thing that we would do in this scenario in phase 4 and any plan here is we would have those targeted groups of special education, ELL students that need direct instructional approach would be, certainly in the building every day as well. So again, this is our initial thoughts on phase 4. And there are a lot of details, pages and pages of details behind this that still need to be worked out and what this could look like. But again, we're kind of in a holding pattern until we get the guidance from the state, okay? And finally, phase 5 is the return to normal. This would be when there is no restrictions on any type of group sizes, any type of, restrictions, although we will have new public health guidelines. I can guarantee that. We know that some of the hand washing and hand sanitizer and some spacing and some social norms are going to be played out in our schools. And I think we're all going to be living that in our personal and public lives as well. So anyhow, that's our thinking at this time. I'm actually going to pause here and then ask if there's any questions from board members. I know it's a lot of information, but thank you for letting me to walk through that. And I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Hey, Brian, that's all great stuff. And thanks for giving us a really good update as it relates to kind of various phases as we think about reopening. The one question I have, though, is obviously we just don't know, right? We don't know what phase we're going to be in come the start of school in the fall. And I'd just be curious from you and your staff's perspective, how can we be proactive as opposed to reactive to delivering an educational model that not only meets the Illinois guidelines, but really meets what the Barrington residents have become accustomed to in years prior?
It's a great question, Gavin. As I commented as I went through each one of those, while I believe our staff stepped up and did the best they possibly could do this spring, it wasn't to the level that our parents and even the staff themselves would say, that they traditionally do in our regular school environment, right? And we know that. And so if we are in a distance learning mode, if we are in phase 1, 2, or 3, anytime during the school year, we have made significant changes in some of our thinking. We are currently working with the BEA and the BSEO staff members on what some of those changes are going to be. Those documents at every level, elementary, middle, and high school, are in draft form. We're having ongoing conversations about what that's going to look like. I think we have to step up the face-to-face instruction. I think we found out clearly that that's something that we have to do differently. I think also if we are in phase 4, as I said, we want to get everybody back in the buildings. Everybody's comfortable in that structure. And we're going to do everything physically possible and operationally possible to make that happen. Another big issue I didn't comment on is transportation. Transportation is a significant challenge. Again, when you put 50 students on a bus, that is, violating phase 3, 2, and 1. We can't do it. So therefore that limits, when 70% of our students are transported on buses. So in phase 4, again, the state guidelines are going to be critical here to see what we can do and what we can't do. We may ask our parents for some cooperation there if we have limits on our buses, meaning, we may ask some people to drive their kids. We may have some staggered start times. I mean, there's a range of things that we're going to have to think through to try to get our kids on campus in phase 4. So Gavin, I guess to answer your question, you know, we're making plans for every phase. I do not want to be prepared for any of those phases because I think it's a real possibility that we could be sometime during the 2021 school year. We may be in different phases. I just am concerned about that, is what I am trying to emphasize. And I think we're going to work diligently to provide the best possible education we can in whichever phase we're in, and hope to goodness that we're in phase 4 and above. If not all of the school year, a high majority of the school year. I don't know if that answered your questions, unless you have something specific.
No, it does. And I get it's almost impossible to plan for, and I can totally understand and appreciate that. I guess the last follow-up question I would have is, as we plan for, you know, whatever phase we encounter in the fall, is our expectation to kind of meet Illinois guidelines or kind of, you know, exceed, which we have done in the past on kind of an educational perspective?
Well, we're going to meet Barrington 220 guidelines when it comes to curriculum and instruction. Okay. I'll say that. You know, I don't want to have any disrespect to the State Board of Education. They work very hard for all the students in the state of Illinois. On the other hand, I do think, you know, that it's the expectation in this community that we provide, you know, you know, excellent above bar education. And we're going to do that. We're going to take every opportunity we have to try and provide that. You know, I can't commend our staff enough, our teachers and our support staff, for being willing to step up to that plate like they did the past 3 months. And they're definitely at the table now trying to figure this out this summer, not only from a, you know, a collective bargaining perspective, but also from an instructional perspective. We have teachers working on this every day. We have training sessions going on. Our teachers are participating in professional development each and every day, all summer long. And they're preparing for what it may look like in each one of these phases, which shouldn't surprise the board. I mean, our teachers do this every summer, but they know that things are different now, and they may be different in this school year. So I just want to commend our staff for, you know, taking that next step, and our administrative team too. You know, we're in uncharted territory here, trying to come up with ideas on how to do school, right? And you know, we're working hard to try and put together, you know, something we can be proud of, and our parents and community will be receptive of starting August 20th. Other thoughts and comments?
It's Barry speaking here. I commend you on your well thought out presentation. I'm excited that I'm hoping we can get to phase 4 and maybe phase 5. Has Barrington Transportation been part of this communication? Have you guys been working with them, or until we know where we are, they really can't get involved yet?
Did you say Barrington Transportation, Barry?
Yeah, transportation company.
Sorry, I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
Yes, we have. Dave's had some initial conversations with them. You know, I think the conversation with them has been, at this point, more around hand sanitizer, hygiene scenarios on the buses, kind of like the cleaning that's been going on in our schools. Dave, do you want to comment about your conversation with John Sander, the executive director there at Barrington Transportation?
Yes, thank you. We've had some conversations, and we'll be continuing those with hopefully some firmer plans as we get into the end of next week, trying to plan for the different scenarios, much as what Brian laid out. I've had that same conversation with the bus company, and they're moving forward with plans around cleaning, sanitation, those kinds of things, and are looking for the district to provide guidance on what our needs are as we roll into next year, so that they can work with us to accommodate our requirements.
Yeah, I think it'll be such things as the use of face masks and possibly face shields. It'll be, you know, gloves. It'll be, if we are able to put a certain amount of students on buses, you know, what is the guidelines and expectations? Signage is going to be huge. And all aspects, not only in transportation, but also in all of our facilities. We're currently working on that based on social distance requirements and expectations, or regardless of where you're at in the facilities or on our buses or on our grounds. You know, we've got quite a bit to be doing. You know, if you look in the private sector right now, you get a glimpse of what it's going to look like in our schools. You go into any retail environment, you know, Barry, in your office, I'm sure you've got new protocols, right? And our nurses, our school nurses are a wealth of information for us, and they're leading that effort, thinking about what it looks like, in their environment as well, and helping us think about, from a public health perspective, what our school should look like as well, assuming everybody's back in the building. So, we're looking at food service is another vendor group, both Quest and Sodexo, that we're having very similar conversations with. What's it going to look like for food service, especially if we can't put, at the high school level, we put 650 kids in the lunchroom 5 times a day. That ain't going to happen in phase 4. Okay, it won't happen. Middle school lunchroom will not happen like we've done it for 50 years. Elementary lunchroom will not happen like we've done it for a long, long time. We're going to have to spread the kids out around the building and create a different lunch environment. Our principals are currently thinking through that and working with staff to come up with thoughts on how we're going to make that happen. That's why that hybrid plan could be a possibility in phase 4 at the secondary level, because we just flat out may not have enough space to do those things, to feed kids, to have band, to do choir, to do orchestra. Those classes are all larger than 50 students, right? These are all the things that we have to think about. How do we do that? Where do we find space to provide that instruction? So these are all factors, and I'm just scratching the surface here of the issues that we're going to have to work through in phase 4 to try and get everybody back into the facility.
So Brian, thank you for covering all the bases on all the possible scenarios. And yeah, there's a lot we don't know, but I would like to just ask, if we went into phase 5 early in the school year, what would that look like, teaching and learning? I mean, you're talking about how businesses look in the private sector right now, but I mean, what would phase 5 allow for?
Well, again, we don't have the guidance, but so I'm speculating at this point, and I'm also speculating based on what it says in the Restore Illinois plan. Phase 5 would mean there's either a vaccine or there's a treatment for COVID-19. Okay, and if that's the case, then we're going to try to be back to normal as best as we can with no restrictions. Basically, business as usual. However, I will qualify this by saying I do think some of our new public health standards are going to be here to stay. I do think the use of hand sanitizer, I do think, shaking hands with opponents at the end of a contest might change, right? I don't, there may be some new wrestling protocols in that co-curricular activity, right? When it comes to public health, there may be, some differences in the fine arts classrooms with singing. That was one of the, things where, good singers sing from the diaphragm, and there's a lot of vapor coming out of the mouth, in excellent choirs, right? And so I think these are all things that are going to be thought through very diligently. So Mike, I want to qualify that with, I give you a few examples of some things that might start to look different. We do have the face shields that we're going to be installing at all of our schools at our entryways that you see in the private sector, like at the grocery store. We already have one here in the district office, and we're in the process of installing those across the district and all of our public entryways. So things like that, they'll probably stay. I don't know. I mean, I'm anticipating that. So I hope that answered your question, but at this point, it's purely speculation beyond that.
I understand. Thank you.
Yep.
Brian, would it be possible for you to share your slides with us so we can have them for reference in case we talk to people in the community?
Absolutely. I will also be putting them out as part of the board notes tomorrow morning as well. So, okay, but I'll share you the presentation. It's a keynote, so I will share that with you.
Brian, to piggyback on Penny's question, I know that a lot of this is kind of high level discussion. And if I could just kind of drill down on a few questions that I'm sure all of us as board members are going to get that we'd like to be able to respond to. And it's some minutia, and there's probably a lot of I don't knows, but I would feel remiss not to ask. One is when if we look at some sort of blended schedule, would the district consider siblings in
Say
this?
it again. I'm sorry, cut out.
If we look at some sort of blended schedule, and Mike, I think maybe there's a little something coming from, sorry.
There's some feedback or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's blend. You're cutting out. Go ahead.
So if we were to do this, going to school, every other day or something, and we're splitting up the kids so that, there's fewer kids in the building at, some of the higher grade levels, is the district considering siblings as part of this discussion? I know that I've been asked this question. I'm sure everyone here has been asked that. So
the answer is yes. Sorry, I usually have that in my comments, but yes, if we were to go on an A and B day type of scenario, whatever that A and B day would look like, if you have a child at Prairie and one at the high school, they'd be on the same day. We would do that for bus purposes as well. Definitely keeping families together, no matter what. Okay, so we've already taken a look at that, and we'll definitely plan that if we are in a hybrid mode.
Okay. Another question is, if we were to do that scenario, is the district equipped with the ability to transmit the live lectures that are happening on the days that kids aren't in school? So, and I'm kind of being proactive in the way that I ask this question, because what I've heard is parents saying, well, if, John goes to school on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, what opportunities are there for e-learning on Tuesday and Thursday when John's teachers are then teaching different kids on those days? And I'm sure that this has been discussed, but just so that if you could share that with us.
Yeah, let me give you there's really two-part answer here to this. Again, this is preliminary, okay? I want to qualify this with nothing has been decided at this point, all right? Because you're assuming that we're in an every other day schedule there, which we may not be. We may be in every 2-day type of rotation. We might be in, it may vary. We're looking at multiple models here, okay? So don't assume it's just every other day, all right? I want to qualify this. But whatever model we're in, clearly, and this is a conversation we've had with the teachers, and I'm talking primarily at the secondary level here, middle school, high school. The teachers would have to teach differently. Okay, they're not going to reteach 2 lessons every other day. In other words, they're not going to have a group A on one day, group B the next day, and teach the same lesson. In other words, so we wouldn't videotape. I do not believe that would be appropriate. We don't have the equipment to do that, and quite frankly, it would be significantly challenging. Good instruction doesn't have the teacher standing in front of a screen or in front of a room, and I mean, it's a lot more to it than that. So, trying to create a video environment that would be appropriate would probably create more challenges and be more frustrating than actually what it was worth. So I do not believe we will, head down that path on a live video stream type format, to answer your question. However, what we will do is teachers that would be in that hybrid mode, in other words, with a rotational scenario where they would only have the kids physically present on half of the days, they would have to teach in a 2-day mode. In other words, almost in a flipped classroom type of scenario where they would do a 2-day lesson, all right? Some of their instruction, and this is very typical in a classroom, not every teacher stands up in front of the classroom every single day and talks for 45 minutes. That's not what happens, okay? Maybe they do a 2-day lesson plan, a 90-minute block schedule type lesson plan, and they, would think differently about what, the actual verbal instructions would go on when the kids are present. The independent practice goes on, whether it's by themselves or if it's under the direction of a teacher in a virtual format. Then you see what I'm saying? They're going to have to teach differently. That's the stuff we're working on right now in professional development opportunities with staff, to try and figure out how to teach differently if we are in a hybrid or blended mode. Did that answer your question, Angela?
Well, I guess, but I'm still confused as to, and I understand that not every day, the 47 minutes or whatever that the teacher has kids in class, that they're not, constantly lecturing. But I guess my concern becomes then, is, if there's kind of a, 2 days set aside to maybe cover what in an ideal situation is covered in 1 day, is there the potential for kids to fall behind? And again, Brian, I know you're working through this. I'm not trying to hold your feet to the fire. I'm just, I need to be able to speak to some of these questions that we're all getting, and I don't know what to say right now.
Well, here's what I guess my answer at this point is, we are working on guidance documents. It's going to address all of this. In other words, the questions you're asking, okay? We're going to have, parent opportunities for questions and comments before, if we were in that mode. We have a lot of, work to do with staff to be able to prepare in that particular mode. If that is the case, good instruction should always be some balance of direct instruction and independent practice, always. And I think, the old model of, 180 days, Carnegie unit, FaceTime in front of the teacher, it's just not the way we do it anymore. Now, what's happening is this pandemic may or may not start forcing the issue in a different way. And a lot of our teachers have made that transition already and do a very different approach to what we experienced as students when we were in school. And I don't know that a lot of our parents fully understand that. Because they have never experienced it, and maybe we haven't done a good enough job at this point to be able to explain what a good instruction looks like. Okay, today in 2020, and obviously that's going to be a challenge for us. Something we're going to have to spend a lot of time on if we are in a hybrid mode, okay, or in a distance mode. We're going to have to work at that. Probably provide some parent seminars. Invite parents into. And do a demo lesson, explain exactly what this looks like for their kids if they're not in front of the teacher in the classroom every day.
Yeah.
No, do you mind?
No, go ahead.
No. Well, I was going to ask, I think what I heard you say is that you expect some more guidance next week, hopefully, or by the end of the month at least, and that we have a meeting on July 14th. Do you think it would, just so we can have a better understanding of what this is, could you walk us through it as if we were the parents? Give us a little bit more understanding about what that might look like. Hopefully, if you're ready at that point.
I will qualify this and say maybe on July 14th, might be on the August meeting. We might be more prepared to, it all depends on when we get this guidance and when we're able to actually get our head around this and be able to, focus in on what we're anticipating for the start of the school year. And again, I've said this to staff when we've been talking, what we do on August 20th may not be what we're doing on November 1st, okay? And it may not be what we're doing on February 1st, this school year. And so we are going to have to be agile. We're going to have to be able to flip on a dime if we move in and out of these spaces in our community. I'm just, I'm concerned that we're going to have to move quickly and be prepared for this. So the answer is yes. We're going to do best to try and get things in front of the board when they've been fully vetted, and the community, the parents, the students, the staff. Everybody wants to know the answers to these questions, right? And when when we have things prepared, I think you've known when we're, I don't want to put something in front of you that's full of holes. It's not good. And I don't want to do that with parents.
But I think what I'm hearing a little bit is that we do get a lot of questions, and I think that there's a desire on our part to have a greater understanding for what some of the plans might be. And so as they come together, will you please continue to make us aware?
Yeah. Well, between now and July 14th, which is a month, it's a long break here for the board. If we finalize some of these documents that I'm referencing, I will certainly provide them for the board. And anything that's finalized, we will walk through with the board on July 14th and the community. Okay?
So go ahead.
Just, can we have something on July 14th? I don't know if anything's going to be final, right? But this is based on the information we have right now. This is close to what our plan is. Unless if we don't have guidance, then of course, guidance could change the plan, but I would think that we know enough to know where we want to start in the
Here's
fall.
what I can tell you what I'm anticipating being final on July 14th. I'll say anticipating. I believe phases 1, 2, and 3, we will be near complete with what distance learning would look like. Okay? That I can almost guarantee you. But we're not done with the conversations over the next couple of weeks. Oh, I didn't mention as well, today I invited a group of parents from every level, from elementary, middle school, and high school, to meet with me and staff at the last week in June to walk through these ideas as well. So I want to get their reactions and their thoughts about what it looks like. I forgot to mention that. So I'll be doing that, and I'll certainly share with the board what feedback I get from those parent focus groups, okay? And principals gave me names, and we're gonna invite them in and kind of just share with them our thoughts and get their reactions and probably make some changes based on those conversations, okay? But yes, phases 1, 2, and 3, I believe we will be in a very solid place. I hope, and here's what I hope phase 4, we will be solid. If we get the ISB guidance in the next 10 days, all right, we should be solid in phase 4. We should be able to know what phase 4 looks like, okay, in our planning. Will we have all the details worked out yet? Maybe, maybe not. But we at least should know which path we're going to be able to head down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Brian, though, that I suspect, I'm very optimistic. I have been saying nobody will start school and everything will be great and there'll be a cure. But I think that we all kind of get that that's probably not the scenario that we're looking at. So with that information, and I know that you're working through scenarios and things like that, but even, we know that the ISB guidance is not going to say it's okay to have a 500-person lunchroom. We know that it won't say that.
That's correct.
So if we know that in advance, then I hope that some of these options that we're looking at, because the blended option, I mean, I understand it, but you have to understand that's really not ideal for parents either. I mean, even saying like a 7th grader is okay, kind of doing things on their own when mom and dad goes back to work. I don't know if that's necessarily true. And, we've seen the studies as on a national level, we've read the Wall Street Journal, and, there will be some element of e-learning to a blended group. So I'm hoping that, because we are so good at what we do, that and we've talked about this a little bit, but, that there's some consideration as far as, staggering the bell. And then that's how you can keep all kids in a school, because they don't all leave first hour at the same time, or changing the way that the lunch schedule is. Maybe we're eating lunches in different spots and no longer all in the commons. And, I think that what our friends and families are saying is, come on, get creative. You kind of know what the challenges are. Can you come up with something that is like better? And I know this is like a rude thing to say, hey, Dr. Harris, but
I hear what you're saying. Physical people in the square footage we have, do the math, okay? If we have restrictions, if we do, which we don't know today, that says every person in that building has to be 6 feet apart, we can't do Barrington High School, okay? If it says that.
Side elementary either, but yet we're saying
we think we might be able to, based on, we'll see. It's more possible at the elementary level, restricting movement and isolating situations, okay? But again, I'm just qualifying this, meaning I'm speculating at this point. Would I like to have everybody back in the building? I've said it 5 times. Yes. Okay. But I cannot, if we're required to have 6 feet of space in every classroom, it's physically not even in the question at the middle school and high school level to do that. Remember, we built and designed these facilities to be efficient and put a lot of people in a small space, right? I mean, that's what we do. You've seen the reports. And pandemics don't jive well with those scenarios. So unfortunately, we're gonna do whatever we can. I use the term. I'll share this. PE. Okay, PE is one of those unique situations. Elementary PE. We may be doing Eskimo PE. Okay, meaning bring your hats and gloves every day, because unless it's 20 below outside, we're going outside for a winter hike. Type of thing. We may be in that mode, right? We've never done that, but we may have to do that this school year if we've got tight restrictions.
But we have such awesome teachers like Wendy Sanchez, who came up with this whole, other way of doing PE too. I feel like there's the potential for doing that and still keeping kids in school where, and I agree, Brian, you're right. If our regulations are kids have to be 6 feet apart at all times, I would argue there is no way anyone is going back to school full time. I still don't understand how elementary kids could fit within the guidelines either. So, but
I guess I'm also banking on that 20% of people saying they're not sending their kids anyway. So, we were thinking about that in our, conversations. Now that may change. We know that until, when actually the guidelines are laid out. But again, we know the childcare issues are real. We've got to figure out an elementary solution. And again, I don't want to get too far down the road here because we've not vetted out all of our options at that level yet. But, I don't want to speculate here in this conversation because, again, we've kind of been in a holding pattern for the last week or so until we get those guidelines, and then we're ready to move.
Brian, one quick question on this. Do you know what kind of representation districts in Illinois have in this conversation with the decision makers at the state level on, what these guidelines will look like or whatever the discussion is?
Yeah, I do know when the plans are written and developed, there was it was a pretty large group, and it included teachers, support staff, parents, community members, superintendents, principals. It included, I saw some of the lists of people. They were pretty expansive, up and down state, really a diverse group of individuals, stakeholders in the group.
So what about this ongoing conversation or decision? What kind of representation do we have in that discussion?
My understanding, the plans have been written, okay? They've been done for several weeks, is my understanding. They're all being held up by the Illinois Public Health Department. That's what I've been told. I'm just sharing with you what I've been told. So the public health officials are holding on those. I believe what they're doing is they're coordinating them with all of the phase 4 rules and regulations, not related to schools, related to everything else in our society. And so I think they're all going to come out about the same time. That's what I believe.
Well, I hope that they're looking at ongoing new data, and I hope they are considering our schools separately because it's a very unique population, and it shouldn't be lumped in with all the data, especially when a lot of the negative results are the at-risk populations are over age, well, let's just say not ages elementary through high school. So I hope they're doing that.
I agree, Mike.
So I have a question, if I may. When you talked about, the rotations and 6th graders being at school, 7th and 8th rotating, freshmen being at school, and the other kids at the high school rotating, mathematically, does that include looking at the classroom sizes in those buildings, that should work if some kids don't come back? Is that a fair question when you did that?
Well, that model is assuming we won't have the 6-foot requirement, okay?
Okay.
Everything in that thinking was assuming we don't have this 6-foot social distance requirement, all right? So we'll see. I mean, we took some assumptions here, and that's why I'm qualifying that whole thing.
Well, that's helpful to know. That's That's a big fat maybe then.
Sure.
Sure.
Okay, so I want to give Brian a little bit of a, I don't know what I should call this, but I want to be sure that we heard him, that he's not sure. He's kind of speculating. Until that guidance comes out and your parameters are defined, it's hard for you to design a plan to work within them. But I think what I'm hearing from the board is be as creative as possible. We are hearing from parents that really want their kids to have access to our excellent staff. And, we've had success with blended learning at the high school level. We've not tried that yet with the middle school level. And even when we have blended learning at the high school level, the kids are in school. So there's some concern over that. So I'm sure we're not telling you anything you haven't already heard, but these are the things that we're hearing. And so we really do look forward to hearing what you have, whatever you can define on July 14th. However, one thing I will give you credit for is that you typically do not release information until you know it's factual and can actually be applied. And so I'll give you a buy on that one. But, I would just, from a board perspective, is this important enough, knowing that we have a meeting on July 14th and then August, one meeting in July, is this an important enough topic that should information become, not be entirely ready for our July meeting, but become clear between that and the August meeting, that we would want to add an extra meeting in order to have an opportunity to digest that information and talk to Brian about it. So I guess that's something that we can address again on the 14th, but I just want us to think about it. So
I may have a request on the 14th. It's just hard to tell at this point. We're going to work like crazy. I hope I get this guidance tomorrow, and we got a month to figure it out. And we have everything wrapped up in a bow for the board on the 14th, but we'll see. Okay.
Yeah, I think, and Brian, I'm sorry, that I think you're doing an amazing job, and I wasn't trying to hold you to things, and I wouldn't hold you to things even when I answer questions in the community, because I know that these are options that have not been fully vetted. But to just say as a board member, I don't know, it doesn't really fly. People need a little bit more. So I appreciate.
Hopefully I gave you some information tonight that you can comment.
Totally.
And truthfully, if those community members ask me that beyond what I shared with you here tonight, I don't know. And other than we're working on details, and we'll have them available before the school year starts, for sure.
And that's how it is in our state, right? This varies state to state. And right now they're leading it, those state decision makers, and it is what it is.
The good news is I didn't look today, but our trend is in a good way in Illinois. And I hope that it just continues in that fashion. As long as people, do what they need to do or do what they're expected to do, I think we'll be in a good place. I really do. But I hope we don't get too crazy here in the summer months and we head the wrong direction, because that will not be good for schools. It won't be good for any of us.
Penny, I kind of agree with you that it might be an idea to think about if we need another meeting, if we're talking more about what's going on with school. From the survey results, people are very, very interested in what's happening and probably want to give their opinions on what the decisions are to keep them informed.
I would think it would be after our July meeting, though, and maybe before the August meeting, because I have this feeling that things may become clearer. But we can, on the 14th, we can make that decision. Any other questions for Brian on this topic or comments?
The only other thing I would say too, we probably would need, if we do have a separate or an additional meeting between July 14th and the August meeting, it would probably be closer to the August meeting. We're going to need staff work time. That's just the reality, so just so the board understand, we're probably looking at that first week in August if we were to do that. Okay. or late July, early August.
We're not, you know what, we can make the decision then, and we won't make it any sooner than you're going to be ready.
Absolutely.
So I would just ask that, you may already be doing this, probably are, but provide flexibility where possible to parents and students when it comes to participating in the different possible ways, right? Whether it's a blended option, a phase 4, some flexibility. I mean, if parents say, no, we don't want to send our kids to school, well, you talked about maybe having a virtual option for them. I think that's great. But I don't know how you would offer that flexibility. Obviously, you need to plan, you need some notice, but maybe provide some options for people and some guidance as far as, obviously if phase 3 versus 4 or something like that changes, we all have to be nimble and react quickly. But if it doesn't, if we're in phase 4 or phase 5 and we stay there, people might say, hey, I think I want to come back, but we've been in the remote, option, and just how we'll allow for that kind of transition, I guess.
My closing comment, thank you, Mike, would be just remember, we are going to prepare for every one of those phases, okay? I believe that we will probably we won't stay in one phase the whole school year next year. I do not believe that. And so we've got to be prepared for each one of those phases. So, and that's what we're going to do.
Please thank everybody who's working on this, because this is monumental and it's a lot of work, and there's a lot of people doing this and working for us. So thanks.
Does that conclude your report?
That concludes my report. Thank you.
Is that a new record?
I think it is.
I think it is.
Probably could have had a discussion item around it, but anyway, I wasn't sure until just a few days ago how much I would have. So, we put it together.
We'll just put it on as a discussion item, and if it's short, that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We discussed.
I'm sorry?
It was fine. We discussed.
It was a lot of information, so thank you very much. Okay. Any question about the informational reports? The FOIA? What about board committee reports?
Finance met today, had a nice discussion. Again, I wasn't at the last board meeting, and based on the discussion we had, both David and Brian said this was discussed at a high level in the last meeting, but every 3 to 5 years, we're audited by ISB on our transportation from an audit perspective. And based on the audit that was completed, there is going to be some money that is going to need to be reimbursed in the tune of around $600,000. So because of our transportation contract with BTC for the next 2 years, we should expect that to continue as a budgeted item. And David has updated our budget based on the discussion that the board had last week, which we still do show a nice surplus, but there will be an impact from a transportation perspective based on how we're calculating reimbursement moving forward. And there's not a whole lot we can do about it. So I've asked from a finance committee perspective if it's something that we want to discuss. Again, I know we did it in the fall or early winter around our total transportation cost as a district, because over the next 2 years, it's going to cost us north of $1 million.
Just to clarify, the document that explains this is in the finance committee meeting agenda. So if it was put in this week, so that wasn't available, I don't think, at the last board meeting, if you want to take a better look at it and if you have any questions.
Yeah, and I would just clarify, I think the surplus that I saw was minimal. It depends on your definition of the adjective nice. Gavin, is the adjective you used, but many might think that might be larger than it in fact really is. It was small.
And
talking about this calendar year.
Yes.
So question, Gavin and Leah, on that memo that was attached that explained the reporting requirement. Was that a change in reporting requirements that occurred at a certain time, or has it been that way for a long time?
Is Dave here? He might be a good person to answer this. Is that fair?
I'll comment briefly. Dave can jump in, but the bottom line is we were unaware of the changes on the transportation claim. Obviously, that's why audits occur, and when audits occur, then we have to meet their expectations. Dave, do you want to comment further?
I think that's well said. I mean, we were operating under prior guidance from ISB in terms of how we put together our claims, and went into this year without any expectation, and into the audit without any expectation of an issue, as we're following things that that have been done in the past, following their rules and guidance, and had been approved by ISB in the past. So
we don't know if the reporting rule changed, or if it was just something that they missed in the audit last time.
There were some things that changed, Mike, and there's some interpretation that happens in all of the conversations with ISB, depending on who you're talking to. So from our perspective, this was a recent change in the guidance they provided to us.
I mean, when I read it, I thought, oh, yeah, there must have been a change that we didn't know about or notice or whatever. But I'm not sure. I mean, that's why I'm asking if there. Yeah. Okay.
That's correct, Mike.
Any other reports? Okay. Then let's move into our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda?
This is Sandra, so moved.
Leah, second.
Okay, included on this evening's consent agenda is an exception bills from May 2020, a bill list from June, activity accounts for BHS and K-8 for May, an NSLP exceptions report from May and June, a 2020 wage and payroll report from May, treasurer's report from May, and a revenues and expenditures report. There are minutes, both open and closed, from May 19th of 2020. There's a revised personnel agenda. There is consideration to approve hazardous crossing resolution. And albeit strange timing, the approval of the last day of school or the academic calendar from the 1920 school year. Any questions on any of these? Okay, hearing none, roll call please.
Sandra Bradford,
Yes.
Angela Wilcox, Mike Shackleton,
Yes.
Gavin Newman,
Yes.
Barry Altshuler,
Yes.
Leah Collister-Lazari,
Yes.
Penny Casimir.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. So an official Barrington welcome to Edgar De La Maro. Welcome. And congratulations to both Chelsea and Sharon.
So let's start with Edgar. Edgar, thank you for hanging in there. And by the way, you got the update on the school year for Barrington 220. So you know more than everybody right now when it comes to the building level, unless we have principals watching. So welcome to the district.
Thank you very much. It was very informative. I was paying attention to everything you were saying. It's great, and I'm very excited to be here. I'm very excited to be in this new phase in my educational career, and I'm very sure that my skills and experience are going to be put to well use in benefit of this district, and especially Sunny Hill. So thank you for the welcome.
We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
And Chelsea, also, congratulations on your shifting roles here. Big change for you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me tonight. I appreciate the board giving me the opportunity to continue to grow as a leader in 220. I'm really excited to work under Teresa and work with the awesome HR team. I've loved so much being on the student services team under Beth. And I look forward to continuing to work with everybody just in a little bit of a different capacity this coming year.
board members will get to know Chelsea and Teresa really, really well this coming year. We got a lot of HR work ahead of us.
Can I say one thing, of course? I just want to say that I have loved working with Chelsea, and I only let her go because she didn't go too far. She's not leaving our district. So she's been amazing, and I know she'll be amazing in this role. And her dedication to our students and our community, our transition program, it's like no other. So I appreciate Chelsea, and I know she's going to do a great job in her new role. I look forward to supporting her in that. But I'm going to miss her a lot.
And I will add to that on behalf of Edgar, just so excited to have Edgar and his talent, skills, and all he brings from his work in McHenry over here to Barrington as a new leadership role. So we're really excited. Can't wait to see all the things you'll be able to do to support our students and staff at Sunny Hill and our whole district. So congratulations.
Welcome.
It's a good night. Thank you.
Now you guys can hang around if you want, or if you want to sign off the meeting and watch the stream, that's fine too. But thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian.
Bye.
Thanks. Okay, on to our other action items. Is there a motion to approve the resolution to abate and transfer working cash funds to the capital projects?
It's Barry, I'll move for that.
Sandra, I'll second.
Okay. Was anyone going to say anything about this? Otherwise, I just wanted to make a note about the change in the memo. Okay. As I was reviewing this memo yesterday in detail, not the memo, but the actual resolution, I don't know if anyone noticed, but, it requires us to list the following members of the board who were physically present and those members that were participating via video or audio conference because it was approved by the board. So I asked Brian to go back and check with our attorneys to see if there needed to be anything in here related to the changes in the Open Meetings Act. And so that's why there's little inserts, I'm trying to think, in the second paragraph that says, in accordance with Public Act 101-640. So I just wanted you to know that that's the only change that was made here. So Brian or Dave, do you want to say anything else about the action that we're taking here?
This is a typical transfer that we do with our DCEP borrowing, moving it from the operations to capital projects.
Any questions or comments from the board?
The only thing I will say, Penny, as I've said in the past, at some point, obviously not today, but at some point in the past, I would love to try to find a way to get away from DCEP to fund capital projects. But in the meantime, this is the path we're marching down.
Agree.
I think we would all like to do that. So, okay. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Angela Wilcox.
Yes.
Mike Shackleton.
Yes.
Gavin Newman.
Yes.
Barry Altshuler.
Yes.
Leah Collister-Lazari.
Yes.
Penny Casimir.
Yes.
Sandra Bradford.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. We have on our discussion item, we have a summer school update.
We do, and at the last board meeting, I had shared with board members that we would have kind of a summary tonight of the summer school program. We provided a write-up attached to the agenda tonight with the details of what's actually happening in summer school. John is going to show 3 slides that just highlight some of the key data points in our summer school 2020 remote version. So John, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, this is a very short presentation. Hopefully the memo clarifies any questions you might have, but of course I'm more than happy to answer any of them. Just real quickly, I put together just the highlights of what the enrollment staffing and then what the overall budget looks like for the summer school. And it's important to note that these numbers still are they're more solid, but they're still relatively there's still fluctuations that are to be expected because students are still throughout the summer enroll and drop in different programs. Moreover, as we've gotten some more guidance from the state for some of our camps and activities, which are oftentimes part of this, those were not included as those happen right as this report was being finalized. So as you can see, the enrollment information, you can see that 2020 our enrollment is down, but not down quite as much as we thought. I would say that the elementary Barrington online summer school that Becky Gill and Ty Gorman especially worked very hard to create, along with a number of other staff and the teachers, has been wildly popular. And so it's exciting to see our students at all levels continuing to take advantage of learning opportunities this summer, especially with the challenging end to this last spring and this last school year. So really, really exciting there. So enrollment is down, but not quite as down as far as we anticipated. You can see here our staffing information, and our staffing information again also is lower staff, particularly at the high school, and that can be kind of explained via the transition to the Illinois virtual school format. And so many of our students are enrolled there. So those students and staff are off the rolls of the high school, but the nice thing is they should have a seamless transition for transcripting their courses when they come back. And finally, you can see that the budget for summer school, at least as of June 9th, was significantly less than what we normally allocate for summer school. It's still running in the red, and the reason for that is that although not quite as much as in years past. And some of the reasons for that are simply that there are some programs that we offer that do not get reimbursement from the state, but that are really critical programs for a number of our students, particularly in the area of student services and some of our at-risk learners. So that concludes my brief summer school update. What questions might you have about this? And then, of course, in the memo, you have all the courses, which I'm not sure you've seen that comprehensive look before, but you have all the courses. And then finally, also, I should also say that typically the business office does an excellent job of updating the board on student fees and how and this is usually part of that report, and that will also, a final update will be done on that, I believe sometime in August or September when it's typically done.
Do you have the numbers of students enrolled in the virtual Illinois Virtual High School, or that's not something you have access to at this time?
That's not something I have access to right now. Steve might have that, but I know that it's a large number. I think well over 600 enrollments.
Yeah, Barry, there's still, because that's run by an outside group, we will get summary numbers at the end. And again, as John said, the enrollment's still kind of fluctuating right now.
Okay.
Yeah, the IVS number too, they have a little different term than we do. So they go all the way up through, I think, the beginning of August. So, and believe it or not, there are some students who can hop in right now and, with some of the courses, finish those courses. So we'll get final numbers on that if you'd like them, Barry.
Other questions from the board? Okay, thank you. And our next discussion item is the superintendent search process. Okay, so at our last meeting, the board announced that we'd received Dr. Harris's letter saying that he will in fact retire at the end of his contract on June 30th, 2021. And in actuality, tonight on our personnel agenda, we took action on that as well. So as the board knows, one of our key duties is to hire a superintendent. And so tonight we're going to take a look at the timeline of hiring a superintendent. And then we have two paths. We can handle a search on our own, or we can hire a firm that specializes in superintendent searches. So what my hopeful outcome of tonight's discussion is the board interested in receiving some proposals from search firms or not? Because what we can do, well, let me do this. What I'd like to do first is walk through the timeline a little bit. So I am going to attempt to share my screen. Okay. Okay, I'm having a little bit of an issue here. Be patient with me just a second, please. Okay. I'll try it a different way. Okay, I apologize. I'm not having luck sharing my screen. So I'm going to ask you to each, in your attachments for this agenda item, there is a timeline. And, oh, do you want to help me? Yes. I have a helper here. Hold on one second.
There should be an option to share.
Right here, right?
Yes. What is that? What is it that we're trying to?
My screen here.
Sorry, there. It is only coming up as.
I know this, I haven't had this problem before. It's okay. I mean, we all have the information.
Are you trying to share the draft timeline?
Yes.
Do you want, I don't know if I can or not, but.
If you can. No, but this is not working for some reason. It's okay. Thank you for trying. Yeah. Oops, sorry about that. It's okay.
It does look like it's having an error.
Do you want me to attempt, Penny?
If you can, yes, please. I need to lose this screen. Here we go. Let's see if she can do it. Otherwise, we all have a copy. We can.
Yeah, we could just open our copies that are attached to the, to the.
I
agenda.
was hoping to be able to share it so the community
How's
can
that?
see it.
Here it is.
Or-
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I did.
Yes. Thank you very, very much.
No problem.
Okay, so thanks for trying. Okay, so if you take a look at this timeline, this is built around a typical search process. So you'll notice that in the summer, because we only have one meeting a month, in July and August, it would be devoted to us doing some research about firms and trying to figure out which one most clearly aligns with how we would like to handle this process. In the fall, working with the firm, we would be gathering information to build a candidate profile and then posting and receiving applications. And then in December, January, we would be screening, interviewing, finalizing candidates with approval of a new superintendent in February. Now, I would say that, this is, I'll say, the typical process. Can it be made tighter? Certainly. Can it go longer? Certainly. It all depends, it depends on the process that we select, that we select to do. So I've done a little bit of research. Typically, this would be the kind of the time frame, but I know when Sandra and I were both on the board when we hired Brian, and it was a much tighter process because I think it was from April 1st, we started the process and we approved Brian on May 29th. So much tighter process. So it can be done. So, of course, again, things can move here or there. So any questions about the timeline? Okay. So I did, thank you, Sandra. So you could pull that down if you don't mind.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. So I shared some of the search firm links with you, and I'm not advocating for any of them. But I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the companies that were out there. And again, not advocating, but there was one firm that had a very, very nice brochure, and that would Hazard, Young, and Atiya, and I shared that with all of you. And on page 3 of that document, which is also attached to our the meeting agenda, I didn't know if you'd had a chance to look at it or not, but it did a really nice job of helping us understand how the responsibilities might be shared between us and a search firm, and how they may, some of the duties they would be taking care of that we would otherwise need to do. So any questions about that? So I just thought for the board members that hadn't been through a search process yet, that would be helpful. So
it was. Thanks.
Okay. So what I need to know right now is, would the board like me to contact some search firms and ask them to start sending us some proposals, with the mindset that, you know, I would share them with all of you, and that at our next meeting, what we would do is perhaps narrow the scope and decide to take it a step further and perhaps invite some firms in to make some presentations to us. So do you want me to get some proposals? Angela's saying yes.
Yes.
I would say yes as well. I mean, this is well above my bandwidth. I mean, are there various firms that are very good at this on a national basis, a local basis? And are we thinking more national or local as we continue this search process?
Well, there's quite a few firms out there. The ones that, the links that I shared with you were firms that came recommended. Frankly, Brian had said, these are some firms that he might recommend. I've worked with 2 of those firms already within the district hiring superintendents, so I know a little bit about them. And if you go to the websites, they're all posting current searches they're involved in, places where they've already placed, or districts where they've already placed superintendents or other administration. And so they're national, those 3. Now, the other one that I gave you a link to is the IASB. So Illinois Association of School Boards, yes, they have a national arm and a statewide arm, but ironically, it's kind of the same people. We can certainly talk with them too. I'm not sure of their level of exposure compared to some of the other firms, but I think there's definitely 4 or 5 that we should be calling. And I mean, I think we received an email from one today, and I've, had a couple others email me. So my thought was that I would work with Mary and Brian and ask them other firms that we should be considering, just to make sure that we've got some choices. And I would say too, if anyone runs across, knows of a firm and wants to make sure that they're included in giving us a proposal, let me know and I'll be sure to contact them.
And the only other question I have from a search process, if indeed we are able to find a candidate through our own methods, if you will, I know a lot of our administrative staff is very tied into the local community. Mm-hmm. How does that impact how much we would pay a search firm, or would it just be a flat fee and that's with the end of it?
I think that would be part of the proposal
Okay.
that we would receive from them. When we hired Brian, we had a little bit of a hybrid approach. And so that's something that we could discuss with the firms, perhaps when they're making a presentation to us. Okay.
I'd probably ask a question in the proposal before I'd have them come in and present, because some may not give you anything extra for that, or, any discount rather. If you retain a search firm, they include all internal candidates and anyone else you recommend in the process fairly, but there's not a discount if you hire somebody, kind of a structure. So I would ask in the proposal.
I think it depends on the type of time frame we want to work within. There's a lot of variables. So, I just know that we did actually have that situation before. So, and that was part of our negotiating with them on the services that we wanted them to provide to us.
I understand. I just don't see any downside in asking in the proposal, because if they say no, then why have them come in to present, right? That's just my opinion.
Okay. I will definitely ask if there's, how they might accommodate that situation.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what my thought is that we would then, review those proposals at our July meeting, and then hopefully be able to set up some interviews between then and our August meeting. So, maybe in August we could actually make a decision. So do you mind if I ask Janine, focus in on a couple different weeks toward the end of July, and ask Janine if she can maybe survey the board on our availability? Because I'm just thinking sooner that, time's going to slip through our fingers. And if we wait until the July meeting to be able to set up a time to interview the candidate, the firms, our schedules may become even more complicated. So.
Are these interviews considered an open board meeting or a closed board meeting, or, what is it considered during the interview time?
I believe they're open.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And we'll need to discuss who to invite in, right, after proposals.
Right. That will be what we'll decide on July 14th.
Okay, good.
Do you think it would be a Zoom meeting probably, or do we know?
In July?
Yeah.
Our meeting? Or a meeting with them?
Meeting with them.
I don't know. Like if we are at a place where we're in phase 4 at that time, we may be able to all meet together, or we may be able to have, right now 10 people can be together. We may be able to, have ourselves arranged in a room in such a way that we can all be together. The challenge with some of us being in a room and some of us being on Zoom is feedback and listening and participating. So we'd either have to do it all or nothing, I would think. But let's see where we're at on the 14th. Okay. Okay, well, thank you. That was quick resolution to that. So we will survey some dates for us. Any other questions before I move on? Okay, the next thing I added to our discussion items is the strategic plan. Now, roughly almost a year ago when we had our board retreat, we talked about how, we had our strategic plan 2020 and how it could carry us through, this school year and even into next. And so we said that we would revisit the idea of, how do we want to, develop a new strategic plan, as well as the timing of how we want, when we wanted to embark on this. So I just thought, right now, I know we've got a lot of balls in the air, we're going to be, we spent a lot of time talking about what next school year looks like and the lack of knowledge about what it holds for us. We're going to be doing a superintendent search. So I wanted to know from the board, is this something that we want to pursue within this next school year? Or let's say before January 1st? Or is this something that we, thinking about we would be hiring a new superintendent, is this something we would like our new superintendent to take on their first year and be part of, or do we want to do it prior?
So, Penny, my opinion is that if we were to put together our plan right now, it is going to be so specifically directed towards what is currently happening in our environment, which is changing rapidly, that I almost hesitate to do it now. And I think the fact that we have a new superintendent coming in maybe is a good opportunity and rationale for waiting. I know that it doesn't feel right to not, have something that's constant, and I know that Mike has mentioned before that, we have this, 2020 and it is 2020 but I don't know. I feel like I am so focused on now and like tomorrow that it's difficult for me personally to think longer term.
Others?
I agree with Angela. I think both because of the total unknown for what this new school year is going to bring, and I think there's enough stress on our administration to try to keep everybody happy. I'm not sure we want to add new bullet points, if you will, to be working on in the at least in the immediate future. And then number two, we'll have a new superintendent, and I think he or she should be integrally involved in whatever our strategic plan is going to be, because they're the ones who are going to help carry it out. So for those two reasons, I think deferring is what I would also encourage.
You know what? I think I'm hearing someone's television. So if there's a mute, if you don't mind, thanks. Go ahead.
I agree with you guys. There's too much going on and people are having trouble focusing just on what they really need to get done right now. And to ask for community input is going to be awkward and difficult too in this time because people aren't going places, and we're not sure if people will be able to come to community input things,
So I think those are all really valid, good points. When I think of a strategic plan, though, it is a longer term plan. There's a 5-year, I don't know how long the current strategic plan was, maybe 10 years, maybe more. And so I would suggest at least a board discussion about our strategic plan. Another one, maybe a meeting about it, because another important point from work I've been involved in, a new leader, CEO, superintendent, is recruited well when there's a strong plan in place for what the objectives are. It helps you assess the skill set well of the person you want to hire to know what the objectives are. And I'm not sure our current strategic plan would change a lot or not. That aside, I think this is just my opinion, to bring a leader in without having at least some sense of an updated strategic plan from one that was done a long time ago, not a best practice. So for those two reasons, because it's a long-term plan, even though, yes, there's a lot of change going on right now, I think we could talk about what we want 5-10 years down the road and consider what's going on now. I'm not sure it would look the same in terms of a process, Leah, of when and how to engage with the community based on the current situation that we were talking about before. But it's okay. I mean, we can be flexible. But to come back to it after the new superintendent is hired, I'm against that idea.
Others?
So Penny, I would say obviously there's so much uncertainty in the world we live today, but I also believe that when we meet annually for our board retreat, we do a really good job of thinking about our strategic goals, not necessarily only in the short term, but the medium and quasi long term as well. So I think that we're very well positioned as we continue our new superintendent search. But until we have some guardrails on what the next school year is going to look like, it's almost impossible for us to at least plan in the near term. To Mike's point, we can look at the long term, but I would rather focus our efforts on the near term to make sure we're delivering a model that's acceptable from an educational perspective.
Anyone else?
Some of the documents you sent us, Penny, talk about having some community input about what the goals of the community are in finding the right superintendent. And so that's a little bit of this. It's pieces of this too. But if we do that, in some of it, we're not being completely short-sighted, I don't think, if we're talking about doing that.
I think when I think of, and it doesn't have to be, this process doesn't have to be replicated, but when we put together the current strategic plan, we had a lot of people present when we were going, there were 300 people in a room or 250 people in a room for a weekend. And, while it doesn't have to be exactly that way, I don't know, I'm torn a little bit because I understand a little bit about what Mike's saying about, maybe the value of a strategic plan helping to create a roadmap for a new superintendent. I also think it would be interesting if we were to replicate the plan where we brought the community together. I think it would be interesting for the new superintendent to be part of that and to be immersed and listen to the community and their values and the things that are important to them, and to meet people from the community, and perhaps make that one of the new superintendent's goals, is to accomplish the strategic plan process. So I'm concerned about the bandwidth of our current staff this year in trying to pull together something like this. So I think that we do our goals every year, and I think that I know we put so much thought into those goals, and we're pretty strategic thinkers when we come to putting those together. So I'm comfortable waiting, and I'm hearing that the majority of the board is also comfortable there. So if
I'd like to just make one suggestion that I just got an idea that I think could be a good one. If you were to somehow in the search process, after you have final candidates, identified, maybe ask them to assess our strategic plan and give us an idea for how they would build it out, or what they would like to see in the next rendering of it. That could be a really good, valuable insight into, what they would bring to that process and to the job itself.
Yeah, we could certainly ask questions related to that. Good idea. So, okay, so what I'm hearing from the board is, well, Sandra, were you going to speak? Sorry.
I was just going to say that I don't even know if we'll be able to bring, 250, 300 people together. It's not even going to be possible, likely. So it'd be very difficult to do.
Yeah.
In that timeline, yeah. Maybe not. Maybe we'll be in stage 5 next year.
It could be.
Big thumbs up from everybody in the room. On the screen, rather. On the screen,
like that.
Not in the room. Okay, so we're just going to pause on this for right now then, and revisit it at another time. So, okay. Let me switch my screen over here. Agenda items for the July 14th board meeting. An enrollment update, referendum construction contracts, perhaps for action, discussion about the 2021 school year format, probably a long one, and a referendum construction update. Anything else? Well, we're going to add the superintendent search
Right.
as well.
Okay, we'll add that too.
And we may, I'm thinking that you'll have to leave me some license here to see if there's a need for a reason that we might have a budget update too. You know, we had talked about seeing how things work out. So anything else? Okay. Is there a motion to approve confidentiality of closed session minutes?
This is Sandra, so moved.
Angela, second.
Angela, go.
Roll call, please.
Mike Shackleton,
Yes.
Gavin Newman,
Yes.
Barry Altshuler,
Yes.
Leah Collister-Lazari,
Yes.
Penny Casimir,
Yes.
Sandra Bradford,
Yes.
Angela Wilcox.
Yes.
Motion passes. Okay, because we need to have a voice vote for everything, I'm gonna ask for a voice vote on the, to adjourn the meeting as well. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mike.
Sandra, second.
Any discussion?
None.
Roll call, please.
Gavin Newman,
Yes.
Barry Altshuler,
Yes.
Leah Collister-Lazari,
Yes.
Penny Casimir,
Yes.
Sandra Bradford,
Yes.
Angela Wilcox,
Yes.
Mike Shackleton.
Yes.
Thank you. It's 9:15. I just want to point that out.
Nice job, Penny.
Guys, thank you.
Okay, happy
I just asked,
summer.
when is our August meeting? Is that determined, or do we decide that, or?
Yes, we approved a calendar for 2 years of meetings. I'll tell you.
August 11th.
Okay.
August 11th, okay. Yeah, it just seemed like last summer we changed the dates. After we had approval, we had changed dates. I just didn't know if this was set or not.
Oh,
It's August 11th.
Perfect, perfect.
All right.
okay. Okay, take care, everybody. Be safe.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks.
I'm not doing it. These.